All right, UJC. How's everybody doing out there? That was the weakest shit I've ever heard. Maybe you didn't hear me. Is this thing on? I said, how the fuck is everybody doing out there? All right, this is going to be an unbelievable panel. Please, everybody, take your seats. Shh. It's amazing how well that works. Watch this. Do it again. Shh. Incredible. Now it sounds like very quiet. So I'm Jason Flom. I am, as they said, the founding board member, not the founder by any means of the Innocence Project. Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld founded it. I went down there and volunteered as soon as I heard about their work. It was basically the two of them in a little office with a microscope, a phone, a briefcase, and a dream. And I said, I'm your guy. I'll do whatever you ask and more. And that's how I got started on this journey. And I started this podcast to tell these stories, to shine a light on this issue, to help prevent it from happening in the future as often as it does, which experts estimate is more than 5% of the convictions in this country are wrongful. I think it's much higher than that. And that goes for death penalty cases as well. So please quiet down over here, you guys. And it is my absolute pleasure and honor to introduce this incredible panel that we have. I'm going to take my seat because they're going to be coming up as well. Please welcome first my great friend, a man named Jon-Adrian Velasquez, JJ. JJ served almost 24 years. Almost 24 years, and have a seat. In prison, maximum security prison for a crime I think they had every reason to know he didn't commit from the very beginning. He's a very unlikely guy to have been wrongfully convicted considering his father was a transit police officer, and he had no record to speak of at all. He's a great champion for justice with a deep passion and commitment to communities impacted by incarceration and wrongful convictions, of course, driven by his own experience. So this is JJ Velasquez. Looks like a fashion model, but he's actually an activist, just posing as a fashion model.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And next, I want to introduce a man who I'm actually in awe of. This is a man, well, Eric Riddick is a man who was wrongfully convicted in Pennsylvania. Evidence was withheld for, 2 decades or more that would have proven his innocence and would have sent him home. But it took an incredible outpouring of support from an incredible group of people, including Meek Mill, to bring him home, and of course Dan Slepian, who's here. So Eric was illegally incarcerated for 30 years, almost 30 years, and he is now doing work that is literally mind-blowing. So, and I always love to be around people who walk literally through the flames of hell and come out carrying buckets of water for those who left behind. And that's the best way I can describe my friend Eric Riddick. Eric. He's, by the way, both of these men have been on the podcast, Wrongful Convictions, so I'm going to put a shameless plug in. Get your phone out, download the podcast, listen to their episodes, hear the stories. It will blow your mind. Not because of me or anything I do, but because of them. Now, the next guest is Taylor Riddick. Now, Taylor Riddick is an incoming JD candidate at the NYU School of Law and an SEO law fellow at a law firm called Skadden, Arps, Slate, and Flom. And that means so much to me because this was a program that my dad established at the firm that he co-founded. And I know that if he were here, he would be so incredibly proud, he's not with us anymore, of Taylor and the work that she is doing and has done, specifically on Eric's case, but on so many others. And she is a superstar. Get to know her. Taylor, come on out. Welcome. And I must point out that her professor, one of her professors, Marty Tankleff, is in the third row right there. Marty himself serves over 17 years wrongfully convicted in Long Island in what became a very, very famous case. Marty is a great hero of mine. So Marty, good work. You've trained her well. You and Professor Mark Howard. It's an incredible program, Making Exonerate. We're going to talk about that. And last but not least, we have Jonathan Abady. Jonathan is he's a revered attorney in the wrongful conviction world. He's a civil rights lawyer and a criminal lawyer and does a lot of work with Rock and has done incredible work on JJ's case, among others. And Jonathan, please come up and join us. So, JJ, as soon as she gets situated here, I want to start with you.
Okay.
I've gotten to know you. We've been friends for about 7 years now. We worked together.
About that.
And JJ's a guy, just so you know, when he was in prison, he would write me letters that you swore were written by a Yale English professor. And I would start writing back, "Dear JJ, everything is fine. Good to hear from you, my friend." I'm like, what am I, writing from fucking camp? This is ridiculous. So I could barely even understand his writing, much less respond to it in kind. So I just resorted to phone calls. But he's an extremely brilliant man and a very courageous man. So JJ, like I said, it seemed just totally unlikely that you would end up in this situation at all. How in the world did they come to target you for the killing of a retired police officer, albeit a corrupt one, but nonetheless?
So it all starts with this, and everybody should understand this. In our youth, particularly from the neighborhoods that we derive from, we're suspects already. The minute we're born and we come out the house and our parents let us go out, we're suspects, right? And the minute you allow them to put those metal bracelets on you for the first time and take your fingerprints, you're labeled for life. And that happened to me in my youth, and the case was thrown out. But despite whether the case was thrown out, and there's law that says that when that case is thrown out, they're supposed to get rid of your fingerprints. They're supposed to actually give them to your legal team so that you won't be discriminated against when you apply for jobs later on down the line. That's CPL 160.50. We're going to get that. We're not even going to deal with the law today. But the truth of the matter is that once that happens, you've been labeled. It's like that scarlet letter. And because my picture was in a database, I was able to be misidentified. But I want to qualify that real quick, because misidentification is supposed to be the leading cause of wrongful convictions. But a lot of us need to start being more aware about what's really happening. It's not misidentification, not in my case, right? Right now, I got lights on in this room. I don't think anybody in this room can deny it. Yet a DA will come in front of a jury and say that the lights are off, right? And the judge will say that if he gets caught out there and if too much pressure arises, the judge might say, well, that's a misinterpretation of facts. That's harmless error. You know what? It's not. When the DA came in here and said that the lights were off, the DA was trying to intentionally mislead us. And we need to be understanding towards that, because I was accused of a crime that 8 eyewitnesses, black eyewitnesses, described to the police as 2 black males, one light-skinned, one dark-skinned, who committed that crime. I don't fall under that description, but that was never questioned. The minute my picture was selected, all the evidence, the actual evidence, went out the window. Now it's, how do we frame him? And I did almost a quarter century because of that, right? I've had, probably the most media attention for an individual who was actually incarcerated. A lot of guys get media attention when they get out. In 2012, a national broadcasted documentary aired on NBC Dateline. Millions of people realized that I was innocent at that point. I wasn't released until 2021. Almost 10 years later. What about the people who don't have that opportunity? The people who never get to be heard? Jason made sure I was heard in 2017, I believe?
Yep.
2017. He had a podcast interview with me. And then Maggie Freeling, who was just up here moderating the last panel, she did one probably about a year and a half before I was released. So there's been a lot of attention put on what happened in my case and the indiscretions that happened in my case. Still, I'm still fighting. I'm on the stage. I'm not free. I might look free, but I don't feel free. You know, and that's what we need to start understanding about wrongful convictions. That trauma doesn't stop. And I don't care how much money they give people once they're exonerated. You can't give me the 24 years you took from me.
And JJ was described by the witnesses, the perpetrator was described by the witnesses as a black male with dreadlocks, okay? How's those dreadlocks doing, Jay, all right? I mean, you can't fuck it up much worse than that. Unfortunately, nothing shocks me anymore, but everything shocks me. Every week I hear another story. Every week we publish another episode that is more mind-blowing than the last one. And Eric, I want to turn to you because your story is, I mean, there's a reason, besides your character and your courage and your, brilliance, there's a reason why your story stuck out, why Meek and so many other people rallied to your defense. But even with the obvious errors in your case, it took almost 30 years to bring you home. What in the world is going on here? And can you talk a little bit about what led to your wrongful conviction and what was the key to you coming home?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me. I know that this panel is dealing with wrongful convictions, and we were wrongly convicted. But to put it in the most plainest language, Malcolm X once said that lynching by any other name is still a lynching, right? We was judicially lynched. That's what happened to us. We was judicially lynched because we living in a society where the judicial system that's supposed to be a truth-determining process, right, have went rogue. And now it's not about determining the truth. Like JJ was just explaining, it's no longer about the truth when politics infect the truth-determining process, or when capital, $40,000 a year for me every year, $40,000 to $45,000 a year. So it's really about the bottom line. It's about politics, and it's about, in many occasions, that old relic from the past seeping up into the times that we living in called racism. And at the end of the day, the beauty about this moment, though, is we look around this room, we see a network of people, and Malcolm also said, the power is with the people, and that's how I came home, a network of people coming together from different walks of life, different dynamics, and, and it comes from dissatisfaction. The court system have been functioning like this for so many years, so many years. And that injustice activated in the people dissatisfaction. And, dissatisfaction is fertile ground for change, and that's what we see today. As far as the circumstances in my case, the evidence was always there. I was accused of climbing a 15 to 20-foot balcony with a rifle, shooting a man while the man was 15, 20 feet on the ground, but all the bullets traveled up. All the bullets traveled up in his body. But again, when you have a court system going rogue, the truth is not relevant. It's no longer relevant until the people reestablish the fundamental principles upon which any civilized judicial system is supposed to rest. I'm so grateful just to even be here, but I see so many people that I've grown to love and respect. I was on Jason's show. I see Ms. Ms. Perez sitting in the front. And, it was just a network of people, powerful people, joined with the grassroots advocates that was fighting to free myself as well as others. But I want to share this real quick, 2 seconds. We both was in prison at the same time. Some of the same people was helping us get out of prison. So I called Professor Mark Howard one day, and he was in the same arena with Dan Slepian, another friend, family, and JJ was on the phone with Dan. So they put us both together and let us talk on the phone. And we gave each other a promise. I told him, if I get out before you, I'm gonna meet you. I said, we coming home because justice is in season. You can see it. You can see it moving. I said, if I get home before you, I'm gonna make sure that I meet you in front of Sing Sing. So when I came home before him, he said the same thing to me. And I made it home maybe a couple months before him. And when Dan told me he was coming home, I jumped in the car, came up here, and I had footage of me going to Sing Sing, trying to get in. They wouldn't let me in, right? They wouldn't let me in. But it's just a connection. We connected through our experience. And these events like this dealing with social justice, and that covers everything. We want to address social justice issues. All we have to do is resolve the conflicts, whether it's poverty, hunger, miseducation, wrongful convictions, and that's the antidote right there. But the power is definitely with the people. And I think everybody that participated in, I call it the village. I have a whole extended family that I'm looking out in the audience and I see on the stage. I want to thank Teller, Teller and the other two students, Alex and Kendall. They went out and did what the district attorney should have did in the first place. They did what the lawyers that was incompetent during the course of my conviction, during the course of my incarceration, should have done. They went out and investigated the scene in a dangerous area. They was out there, doing measurements, doing trajectory, all that stuff, And I'm just so grateful to be a part of this moment. Since I've been home, I started a foundation called the Emergency Response Foundation. And it's geared to address the most critical issues that's affecting our community, criminal justice reform and community development. And my family been on me since I've been home. I've been home 13 months. Last night was the first time that I got a good night's sleep. The first time, you know what I mean? And real quick, because I don't want to get long-winded, that's because, I came home and it's thousands of people still hanging from that noose called wrongful convictions, right? So it's like I spent more time with those individuals than I spent with my own family, So I hit the ground running right now, and I think I'm helping maybe around 10 pro se litigants file post-conviction relief petitions, and I'm gonna continue to do that.
Thank you, Eric. And before I introduce Taylor, I do want to shout out Desiree and Danya and the whole ROC team for putting this together. And everybody in the room, give yourselves a round of applause because you're here. I mean, it's too hot outside anyway, but still, I'm just saying, it's really, it takes a village, like Eric said, and you guys are here. And most importantly, the other exonerees in the room. Can you all stand up? There are a number of exonerees here. I see you. Raise your hands. And yeah, please go up and speak with them and learn from them. Okay, so now, I've been waiting for this. Why are you so awesome? That's what I want to know. I'm just kidding. I'm going to embarrass you. So this program, Making an Exoneree, has had a profound impact. I hope it gets replicated in every college in the country. These are undergraduate students who have been a key factor in exonerating a number of innocent people. It's extraordinary. Can you tell us how it works? And by the way, total coincidence that we have a Riddick and another Riddick. I mean, I'm gonna get Barry Sheck up here with the DNA and see if there's some connection, but there is no connection, but still, that's pretty extraordinary. So yeah, tell us about Making an Exoneree and what it's meant to you and how it works.
Of course. Well, first of all, I have to give a shout out to Marty Tankliff, who's in the audience, who,
Marty.
thank you, Marty. Marty is an exoneree himself, and he and Professor Mark Howard founded the course Making an Exoneree at Georgetown. So during my time at Georgetown in 2019, myself and 17 other students were selected to participate in the Making an Exoneree course, where we received, or Mark receives, and Marty receive a ton of different cases that come in from different people asking them to take on their case, and then we narrow it down to, we end up with about 6 cases that we all work on in teams of 3. But this case in particular was introduced, as we heard, through Meek Mill, who brought the case to Marty and Mark's attention, and then we worked on it as a result of that. But I mean, Eric alluded to this earlier, and Jason also touched upon this, but there was just a ton of evidence pointing towards Eric's innocence in this case. So Eric and his family, his wife, and his mother, who are also here with us today, they laid the groundwork for his innocence. Eric, like he said, has been working on his own case for 20 plus years, and then so just want to make sure I clarify that Georgetown played a role, but a small role on top of all of the work that had been done by Eric and his family. But in the course, we really become sort of investigative journalists, and we also have the opportunity to work with legal teams in some cases as well. So Eric's case is based in Philadelphia. We were based in DC, and so my senior year of college, I think about every weekend I spent in Philadelphia, which I didn't expect to do, but it was a great experience, and we were just really lucky to work with Eric. And in the course, we also made a presentation in front of the Conviction Integrity Unit for Eric, and we worked really closely reading through all of the case documents that came to us. So it was an amazing experience. I mean, as just an undergraduate student, having the ability to have such an impact, but also just the exposure that would be really hard to have in any other case, but then also when you're so young. But of course, it's, I can say it's a great experience, but obviously it's a very real issue that we're talking about, and it's a very serious issue. And I just am very grateful to Marty and Mark for founding the course, but then also just for Eric and his family for letting us in and giving us the privilege to work alongside you guys.
Well said. And I want to point out that the power in these cases resides almost exclusively with the district attorney. And it's, I don't know if she's here now, but we have one of the great district attorneys in our country attending today, Kim Fox from Chicago. Kim, are you here somewhere? Kim, where are you? Oh, she may be backstage. Okay, so now I've embarrassed her by not being out here, but that's the way it goes. But if you get a chance to meet her, she is a superhero. And we also have with us Steve Mulroy, who's running for DA in Memphis right now against one of the worst, most racist DAs in the history of America, Amy Wyrick, and that's not hyperbole. The race is August 4th. If you get a chance to meet Steve, he's here, right over there, Steve Mulroy. We can change the course of history in Memphis, Tennessee, where you get an 8-year term. Only in Tennessee you get an 8-year term. And so the amount of good that this man can do and the amount of damage that will be prevented if we are able to help him win will be just absolutely extraordinary. And now I want to turn to John. John, you are, like I said, you're sort of revered in this space. There's a reason why you're up here now. There are so many lawyers doing so much great stuff. What is the key to helping people like JJ come home, in your view, and what can others do? I get asked that question all the time by students and others. What can I do to help?
Well, look, let me just say, before I answer that question, any good lawyer dodges the first question out of the box. So, look, what I'm struck by is the degree to which there's so much tragedy and travesty on this stage right now, and how much tragedy and travesty there is in the country related to this issue of people being wrongfully incarcerated. But I think notwithstanding the tragedy, there is something important to celebrate. And the celebration is that JJ and Eric are here. And that's sort of my roundabout way of sort of answering your question, because a good lawyer will always get back to the question on his or her own time. I mean, the reason that the JJ is here is because there was a village. It was a huge village. It included many lawyers, many activists. Jason was incredibly involved. It included Rock Nation and Desiree Perez. Our work would have not been possible without Rock Nation and Desiree Perez. So it really takes a village, and that's, I think, the biggest answer. This is major political action that has to happen to dislodge these wrongful convictions. And so it is a celebration, but it's obviously a bittersweet celebration. And the bitterness is because, as JJ alluded to, these are people whose lives have, if not been destroyed, have been taken from them and robbed from them. And sometimes we sort of drive by the most compelling, salient facts. I mean, these people have had portions of their lives taken from them that they will never get back. They're irretrievable. And, you know, these guys are the tip of the iceberg. They're two of many. There are hundreds and thousands of people that are in our facilities that don't belong there. And so it's a pervasive, systemic, widespread problem. And that's a fucking bummer, right? And so I think in a lot of ways the question is, what do we do? What do we do with this systemic problem that is destroying lives almost exclusively in communities of color? And you know, I have a couple ideas about that. And I think the first thing really is not to despair, despite how bleak it is. And I say that because I think there's a lot of reason to be demoralized and depressed about what's happening. But we can't surrender to that despair. It's not an option. And I think we have to let these guys, Eric and JJ and the other exonerees, be inspirations for us. I mean, I have to say, like, JJ is such a remarkable human being. I mean, when you, and Eric too, I mean, these are guys from which so much has been taken. Everything, almost everything has been taken from these guys. And look at the positive energy and what they are doing. I mean, it's just, it's remarkable, and it should inspire us, and it does inspire us. And so I think we have to harness that energy. I mean, I'm reminded of that very famous saying by Joe Hill, the legendary labor organizer from the 1920s, who said, "Don't mourn, organize," right? Organize. And I can't think of any greater examples of that philosophy than JJ and Eric, who are not mourning. They have every reason to be bitter and angry and to give up, and they're out there leading these efforts to try to correct this problem. And that's just an amazing testament. So, like, what's going on? What does it mean to organize? We've got to organize as a movement around concrete objectives and goals. And so what are some of the concrete objectives and goals? Like, one thing that's happening right now in New York City, in the state of New York, is the wrongful conviction statute, the unjust conviction statute. There is a major reform bill that's pending right now in the legislature by Steve Holliman. When a person is wrongfully convicted, as these guys are, one of the things that they can do to try to get some redress, some compensation, to try to facilitate their reintegration into the community is to sue under the wrongful conviction statute. But like many things in the law, there are all sorts of obstacles and barriers to really being able to effectively mount a wrongful conviction challenge. And this bill that's currently pending in the New York State Senate does amazing things to correct that. And so everybody needs to find things like that and support these senators and tell them, you must pass that bill. And there are many things out there like that. Now, that's a bill, and that's an effort that's after the fact, because that's attempting to do something for somebody once they've already been convicted, right? And so the question is, what can we do that's more proactive? What can we do that's more preventative? And Jason is alluding to, I think, really sort of the biggest thing that comes to my mind. It's this amazing movement across the country where we're seating progressive district attorneys in different parts of the country, right? Now, Now, why are we doing that? Why is that such a critical, important factor? Because that's where the power is. Who has the power to charge? Who has the power to prosecute? Who has the power to correct the wrongs when they happen? It's the prosecutors, okay? And right now in this country, Kim Foxx, Keith Ellison, there are major figures out there that are having a huge impact on this issue. I mean, a lot of people in this room are familiar with Meek Mill because that's another amazing project supported by Rock Nation and Desiree and her team. You know, Meek Mill was a case where the criminal justice system totally failed, the court system failed, the judiciary, to say the judiciary failed is an understatement because the reason Meek was in was this crazy-ass judge that had him locked up for all that time. And what we realized was that a potential key there was a progressive prosecutor who had been put in by this movement. And his name is Larry Krasner, and Larry Krasner was instrumental in assisting us in getting Meek out. And I think Jason is referring right now to the most important DA race in this country, which is in Shelby County, Tennessee, and Memphis, where you've got the worst prosecutor. Innocence Project has said, worst prosecutor in the country, and she's up for re-election, and she can be beaten. And we need to get our asses out there and put our money behind it and make sure that she gets in. And make sure that he gets in and that she doesn't get in.
And by the way, I don't even know if I'm supposed to do this, but Steve Mulroy for DA is the website. If you donate even $5 or $10, it goes a long way in Memphis, Tennessee. Steve Mulroy for DA. So we only have about 3.5 minutes left, and I think we need to focus on the people that are left behind. That's, you know, this is a room full of people with energy, with brains, with resources. So I'm going to go like a speed round. JJ, is there one person that you would like people to know about? Is there a petition they should sign? What can they do?
I'm gonna cheat a little bit and say 2 names.
Okay.
Free Gary Ben Laws, free Bruce Bryant.
Those are Instagrams. Free Gary, and both cases that I'm involved with, both incredible, good men, and we're going to bring them home. But your help will be very helpful. Oh, and Kim Foxx is back, by the way. We talked about you while you were gone. So the great woman is right here in the front row. Great leader. Eric, what about you?
I'm gonna say 2 also. Free Kevin Bowman and free Troy Coleman.
Yep, and Troy has been on the podcast as well and is an incredible man. We're going to bring him home as well, hopefully very soon. He's been in for 32 years already for a crime that happened in Pennsylvania when he was in California. You gotta explain that one to me one of these days, because that's the real truth. It was a murder. He didn't do it remotely, trust me, okay? He didn't have like a button like in a science fiction movie. So, what about you, Taylor? Huh? You got one?
No one in particular right now, but I mean, there's so many people.
But I do want to shout out 2 people that the Making Exoneree class brought home, Keith Washington Jr. and Valentino Dixon. Both of them I've been honored to interview. Incredible stories. Keith Washington Jr., a decorated police officer defending his own home when 2 career felons attacked his family and got convicted of murder. You can't make this stuff up. John, what about you? Is there one case that keeps you up at night? I mean, there's a lot that keep me up at night.
Well, I have to continue the tradition of not answering directly your question. I'm not going to give you a person. I'm going to give you a concept. And the concept is that we have to, in addition to doing these concrete things, we have to start, in addition to dealing with symptoms, deal with underlying causes. And what are the underlying causes here? Let's get it out there, because this kind of context, we got to look at the micro and the macro picture here. What is the macro picture? This is a stepchild. Wrongful convictions are part of our criminal justice catastrophe. And what this is all related to is mass incarceration and the school-to-prison pipeline. And if we want real change to happen on this and all the other criminal justice issues, we have to have a massive campaign in this country, a movement for redistribution of resources and wealth away from funding the prison industrial complex and repressive police practices and wrongful convictions, and take all that hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars for caging people and destroying communities, and that money needs to go into our communities, to invest in our communities, okay? That's what's got to happen. And guess what? That's a fucking political issue. Don't let anybody tell you this isn't political, okay? Politics is everything, and everything is politics, okay? And how do we get that massive redistribution of resources directed in the right way? We got to get the right people in office. We got to get more Kim Foxes in office, more Keith Ellisons in office. We got to get our asses out there, and we've got to there's not going to be an armed revolution in this country. It's going to be through political action and political reform. And the crisis facing us right now is those midterm elections, okay? And we're in a civil war. And if we lose the House and Congress, they've already shown us what they've done to the Supreme Court. The next thing is what democracy we have, and we're far from a perfect country, and we got far from a perfect constitution. But what little we have is on the line. And people need to get out and make sure that we don't lose the House and Congress this year. People say, like, what does wrongful conviction have to do with the political situation, the midterm elections? Everything.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. And we're going a couple of minutes over here, but I want to put some pictures up, so to put a face to some of these names, if we could. There we go. That is, that's, I'm forgetting, that's, this is Nelson Serrano. Jeez, I can't even remember all the names. I didn't know which order they were going to put them in. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, I'm not going to speak to the names because it's going by too quickly. And I would be literally the worst eyewitness because I can't remember faces. But so these faces are the faces of men and women who have been wrongfully convicted. Just some of it's a tiny tip of the iceberg of the many, thousands and thousands of people who have come home. But there are hundreds of thousands who haven't. And to this day, my estimate is that we have over 150,000 wrongfully convicted people in prison in America right now. Social scientists agree with that, so it's not just crazy Jason talking, okay? But they estimate that 5.5% of people in prison are wrongfully convicted, and then in jails, obviously, that number is much, much higher. So
we know it's much more.
It's a crazy number. So with that, I want to thank again, first of all, one more shout out to the exonerees in the room, including you two guys and everybody else. Lorenzo, I see who's over there. And to our extraordinary panel, thank you all. And now let's get out there, get active, get angry, and let's go. We need every one of you, okay? And don't forget, I have a podcast. Did I mention that? All right, thanks everybody, and thanks again, Rock Nation.